Today we're going to talk about subtracting integers. This is the second part of lesson 7. We learned how to add them last time. Subtracting is a little bit different than that. So let's take a look at just a reminder of what we did with the adding. We first talked about adding on a number line, and we said that if you are going to add on a number line, if you're adding positive numbers, you move to the right. If you're adding a negative number, you move to the left, and you start on the number line wherever that first number is. But we also talked about the fact that if you've got big numbers, you really don't want to have to use a number line because that'll take too long to hop around. So we talked about rules for adding. When it comes to the rules for adding, we said that if the signs were the same, as it says right here, meaning they're either both negative or both positive, then we really do add the absolute values. We add 6 and we add 7, we get 13, and the sign doesn't change, it stays a negative. The same would be true as if they're both positive. Positive 6 plus positive 7 would be positive 13. We also said, though, that if the signs are different, that's where it becomes a little bit more tricky. If you have one of each, you have one negative and one positive, it doesn't matter which one comes first. I know this one both has negatives first, doesn't matter. You simply take the two absolute values, and instead of adding them, you subtract them. So 9 minus 4 is 5, 8 minus 2 is 6, and then the answer will have the same sign as the one of the two add-ins, whichever is farther from 0. So in this first case, the negative 9 is farther from 0, and since it was negative, your answer stays negative. On the second one, the 8 is farther from 0. So since it's positive, the answer 6 is positive. Okay, so now, the rules for subtracting integers. It's called adding the opposite. Okay, so this is what we do. We keep the first number the same. So if we have 6 minus 9, we're going to keep the 6. We're not going to change it. We're going to change the minus sign to a plus sign. So you can see here, we've taken this minus sign and changed it to a plus sign. The third step is to change the second number to its opposite. This is a positive 9, so here we've changed it to a negative 9. Remember, we said the parentheses is kind of a courtesy. Since negative numbers are new to you, they're making sure that you see that the number is negative. And then you follow the rules for adding. Our rule for adding numbers with opposite signs is to not add them at all. Instead, we subtract them. 9 minus 6 is 3. And then remember that it gets the sign of whichever one is farthest from 0. Negative 9 is farther from 0 than 6, so the answer is negative. Let's look at the second example. We keep the first number the same, negative 7. Change the minus to a plus. Change the 12 to its opposite, a negative 12. Now, what are our rules for adding integers? If the signs are the same, we add their absolute values. So 7 and 12 is 19, and when they're the same, we don't change the sign, so keep it negative. Negative 19. Let's look at our third example. Keep the 3 the same. Step 2, change the sign. Third step, make the second number, its opposite. Opposite of negative 4, positive 4. Now we have a positive and a positive. So the signs are the same. We're going to add them, 7, and keep it, positive 7. And here's our fourth example. Keep the first number the same. Change the sign. Opposite number. So we're going to add opposite. That's where that rule comes from, add the opposite. So negative 2 becomes a positive 2. Now our rule for adding, opposite signs we don't add. So 9 minus 2 is 7. Negative 9 is farther from 0. It's negative. Answer's negative. All right. There's another vocabulary word in this section. It's range. When it comes to the range, you're looking for the difference between the largest and the smallest number in a set of data. So, for example, if we took a quiz and the scores ranged from 100 to 80, we would have a range of 20% range, because the difference between the highest and the lowest is 20. 100 minus 80 is 20. And so the thing to remember here, though, is that our ranges can have negative numbers. So probably the most difficult thing here is that they usually give you range questions in a word problem. And so you have to remember which one is the largest, because you want that number to be first, and which one is the smallest number. You want that one to be second. And since it's a subtraction problem, then you follow your rules for subtracting, which is keep the first number, change the sign, make the second number its opposite. Okay? So here's an example. Or not an example, but another way to think of it. Operation signs, meaning adding and subtracting, can be like positive and negative signs. If we had 3 minus 6, we could think of that as a positive 3, because when there's no sign, it's like a positive. And then this is like, instead of minus 6, we could say it's like a negative 6. Okay? We talked the other day about thinking about adding negative numbers, like moving in a board game, going backwards when you're moving on a board game. So if you added a positive 3, you'd go ahead on the board game 3. If you added a negative 3, you'd go backward 3 on the board game. But again, that's a lot like a number line. That's fine if you've got small numbers. If you've got larger numbers, it's a little bit more difficult. All right, let's do some practice.